Very much. Thank you, Claudia, and thank you all of you to spend a little bit of your evening with me. And I'm really glad to be here tonight and to talk a little bit about this battle within ourselves, which is a battle that we're probably not aware that exists. So when we have a battle against something that we know it exists, if it is a disease or if it is something that doctors or people around us can point to that particular battle and say, okay, so we can use this particular medication, or we can use a certain approach to go about that particular battle. It's relatively easy to take. Obviously, it causes pain and everything, but it's clear what is the path to go through that battle. But this battle within, like I said, in a lot of cases, we don't even know it exists. It affects us immensely, but in a lot of cases, we are not aware that it is there. So that's what I'm going to be talking about tonight. And as a segue from the text that Claudina read to us, which was about Paul. Uh, and by the way, if you guys want to know a little bit more about the history and how Paul influenced the Christianity in general, there are two places that I would recommend. There's the book of Acts from the New Testament, which has the story of Paul. I would say probably half of it talks about the story of Paul of Tarsus. And there's also a much more complete and one of my favorite books, which is Paul and Stephen, from Francisco Cândido Xavier by Emmanuel. So you can read that book, and that has a lot of the details that I'm going to try to cover here in this particular slide. But this image here is from Nicolas Bernard Lepisse, and it talks about the conversion of St. Paul. So we are all aware of St. Paul, and the impact he had on Christianity, but Paul was one of the persecutors of the early disciples of Jesus. If you guys don't know that, he was a judge among the Jewish and persecuted many Jesus followers before he converted himself into Christianity. And then one day, going after one of those followers, he was in this road towards Damascus, which is today Syria. He basically had a moment, a Jesus moment, and I guess that's where the expression comes from, where he finds himself in this middle of this road, and he sees this wonderful light that he couldn't explain what it was, and without realizing, he was kneeling. And as he was kneeling, this voice comes to him and say, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? So at that moment, he was not known as Paul, he was known as Saul. So it was actually Jesus that came in and said, why do you persecute me? And from that very moment, he realized that everything he was doing to going after all those disciples of Jesus was wrong, and that Jesus was really the Christ that the Jewish were expecting. He was completely the opposite of what they were expecting, but he was the Messiah. And in that very moment, he changed his attitude. So again, he had a Jesus moment, as as the term says, where he had the privilege to see Jesus, and that changed his life from that moment on. So he basically dropped, as the text said, so I'm going to steal the words here from Emmanuel. So from the moment that he started his journey, where he was not the persecutor anymore, but he was the one that got stoned, that got incarcerated, misunderstood, but he turned out to be one of the biggest disseminators of Jesus and his words. And he's probably one of the reasons why we are here today talking about Jesus. So Paul he was a different person. He dropped his ego, he dropped his attitude, and he became a very humble person, very patient person. And he did this wonderful work that we are all benefiting from still today, more than almost like 2,000 years after the fact. So that's a story. So he had this battle within himself that he needed someone like Jesus to point out to him that that battle was wrong. And the funny thing is, when Jesus asked him, like, so why do you persecute me? Right after, he comes and say, Lord, what do you want me to do? So basically that shows how much he humbled himself, and how quick he realized he was wrong. So unfortunately, all of us, we might not have that privilege. Hopefully some of us will have that privilege, but we not necessarily need to have that moment to realize what is wrong with us. So my goal here tonight is really to go through a little recipe for us to realize what can we do about ourselves and how we can deal with those inner battles. So for the next slide, I'm gonna steal Kardec's word from the Spirit's book, question 168. And the question says, is the number of corporeal existence limited, or does the spirit go on reincarnating himself forever? And then the answer is, in each new existence, the spirit takes a step forward in the path of progress. When we strip ourselves from our own impurities, so it takes a process of coming here back and forth many times until we become a more evolved spirit. So you might read this particular text and say, what? What is it saying? A lot of words. So I just taking the same slide again, and I'm just highlighting the important part. So the spirit takes a step forwards in the path of progress when he strips himself of all his impurities, which translates to inner transformation. That's what we need in order to become this better person. And that's what basically, it was not Jesus that really motivated Paul. Jesus inspired him to be better. And Jesus just has shown him the way to be better. And this is what Spiritism is all about. A lot of people might say Spiritism is a religion. Yeah, you might want to consider that. Some people consider Spiritism a philosophy. What I consider Spiritism, it's another tool in my toolbox that helps me to be better. That's what I think Spiritism is. It's this little tool that can help us to become better. So you might say to yourself, okay, I got it, but how can I do that? What do I need to do to basically fight this inner battle? How can I become better? So we go back to the Spirit's book, question 199, sorry, 919. What is the most efficient method to be better, to improve our own moral and how we deal with the bad things in our life? Just making the question a little simpler. And we go back to almost 500 years before Christ. And the answer comes from a very famous philosopher called Socrates. And the answer that he tells us is, know thyself. I'm not sure how many of you know Socrates, but he inspired, or he has a profound influence in the Western philosophy. And Kardec mentions him several times in his books. So he was definitely an inspiration to Spiritism himself. And again, this guy was there 400 and something years before Jesus. So it was even before Jesus. So it's very, very important that we understand ourselves and that we really reflect about the things that we do every day. So a lot of people has like different methods of understanding itself, but I'm gonna again go back to Spiritism here and listen to Saint Augustine on the same question from Spirit's book 919, where he says that basically at the end of every day, he, like before he sleeps, he would think if the things that he has done that particular day, if they were good or bad, if people would complain about the things that he did during that day. And that's the tool that he used to identify himself and the things that he needed to be better. So, and it's a tool that can be very effective on us. right? It is something that we can use. So every day before you rest, and when you're in your bed, just reflect about what you have done during that particular day. How many people not only you influence to the bad, but what did you do good that day? Like, how many people did you help? And when I'm saying help, I'm not just saying donating or doing, like, even at your work, how many people did you proactively help just for the sake of good? So it's a reflection that we got to do every night, and that helps us to identify those little holes that we might have in ourselves. Other things that can also work, a lot of people use meditation. So meditation is a technique, and it takes time and practice. I'll be honest with you guys, I've tried. It's not my thing, but it works for a lot of people. What works for me is when I'm exercising, that's my meditation. So when I'm riding my bike or when I'm doing a hike, I try to reflect about myself and the things that I need to do better. So that's something that works well for me as well. But meditation is definitely a technique that even in some of the Spiritist material, you will find a lot of recommendation about doing meditation. So it's a great way to identify the holes within ourselves. And then we also get a little bit more here from St. Augustine. So he also, Kardec asks, so how is the most effective method for guaranteeing self-improvement? And then he brings this answer, which is basically related to the golden rule. So the principle of the golden rule is treating others how you want to be treated. So basically, if you're questioning some of your own actions, you might ask yourself, if somebody did that to me, how would I feel? Would I like that? Would I reject that? And that's a good way to measure if what you're doing is really something good or bad. So again, another tool in our toolbox that helps us to move forward. Another thing that really helps us to identify things that we need to improve are what a lot of the leadership books and things that I have read call as loving critics. So when you have the chance of having someone that can give you good criticism, it's wonderful. And typically the people that we love the most are the ones that can give us the best tips. In a lot of cases, especially your partner or someone, your kids, someone that is really close to you, maybe the delivery method is not that great. That's not my case. I'm really lucky because my wife, she's wonderful, telling me what I need to improve, and she has a really good way to communicate that. But in a lot of cases, that might not be the case. People might get anger. So what we have to do there is really try to abstract the method or the deliver method of the message and try to concentrate more on the message. And that also applies in your work, from your friends. If you are a friend of someone that is going through something that you don't think is right, it's your duty as a friend to communicate to that person that person is going through a bad course. So being that love critic and having people that really care for you, because you might think someone is trying to hurt you, but it is quite the opposite. If someone really loves you and really cares for you, they will tell you what it is. And again, try to go beyond the delivery of the message and try to concentrate on the message itself. And I have a little story that I want to share with you guys. And I'm going to just share a video here. Hopefully this will work. I might need to, let's see if I need to do anything. It seems like I am able to share my video, no problem. So let's see if you guys can see my screen now. Can you guys see my screen there? My
Yes.
Awesome. So let me play here.
Joan Pica spent 16 years in prison for murdering her friend's father when he was a 16-year-old. But he turned his life around. Today, Pica is helping to provide a college education and life skills to incarcerated men and women in New York State.
Sean Pica was in 9th grade in Long Island, New York, barely shaving when he shot and killed the father of a classmate.
When I tried to wrap my head around the fact that I took a human life, the world got really small really quickly.
Pica was sentenced to 24 years in prison, which is where he began to turn his life around.
And while I was sitting there thinking about how I failed everybody, one of the officers came to my cell and he just said to me, "Is there any chance I could get you to help me work with some of the other men?" So I began to read to these men in an effort to get them to learn to read and write.
16 years later, Sean Pica was free. He connected with a nonprofit that had helped him behind bars called Hudson Link for Higher Education in Prison. It provides college education and support to incarcerated and formerly incarcerated men and women.
What's up, guys? How you doing?
And today, Sean Pica is its executive director.
Now, we're talking about what we're doing right here, right now. We're not talking about the past. We're putting everything else that happened before this moment behind us.
Hudson Link is trying to end recidivism. That's where the vast majority of inmates end up back in prison after release.
I'm fourth generation male incarcerated in my family. I took my gift for numbers to become a drug dealer. The education was very important because I didn't realize the connection between what I already knew, my natural talents, and success.
Today, Hudson Link has awarded 600 college degrees with a recidivism rate of less than 1%.
This is an accredited degree-granting college program. Their degree does not say University of Sing Sing. It says Nyack College. It says Mercy College. It says Columbia University. I have seen the rippling effect of that one degree as it goes into their families, their children, their neighbors, their community. We are truly helping the community through this one person and this one degree.
Sean Pica,
Isn't that an amazing story? Can you imagine being
Yes.
16 and killing someone and then literally going through hell, which is prison, and then coming around this? So this guy had his own Jesus encounter moment, and he realized that he can actually do something good about himself rather than just concentrating on the bad things that he did. And he literally turned around. So I actually went through this Hudson Link website. They help more than 600 prisoners to, go through their colleges. And the funny thing is the rate of people that became criminals again, it's like 0.2% or something like that across all those 600 men. So it's really amazing. He took something bad and turned into something really good. And that's, again, he went through a really bad course in order to turn it around. And we don't have to do that. And again, that's why Spiritism is here. It's really to give us the tools that we need to basically avoid going through terrible things that could happen to ourselves. So I really wanted to share this story with you guys. And then the other thing that we need to keep in mind is that things are not transformed from one day to another, right? Again, we're not lucky enough to have an encounter with Jesus like Paul did. So the ideas are only transformed in the long run, as Kardec is saying here. So it takes time and effort for us to improve something. And it might take for some bad things that happen within us, it might take a couple of lives to fix that. But what we can do today is really, if we identify what it is, we can work on it. And little by little, day by day, it might be something that will take, a couple of days. It might take months, years. It can take like 30 years. But whatever it is, as long as we are focused and doing a little bit every day, that's what it matters. Doing little by little, we can fix and we can really tie those boats that are not very well tied for the machine to properly work. So that's the idea here. We're not, obviously the faster that we can do things, the better the life is going to be for us, because it's going to get to a point that we might not need to come here to earth. We might be able to go to a different sphere where happiness prevails. But until we get there, we need to work on those little things in ourselves in order to be better, like Shampika just did. And we are approaching almost the end of the presentation. And I took here another text from Chico Xavier, which in my opinion was the greatest medium and one of the greatest contributors to Spiritism, where he talks about 20 practical exercises for inner transformation. So I'm not gonna read line by line. I'm only gonna highlight a couple of those, but a very important one to me is to joyfully perform our obligation, especially at work or at home. Sometimes we have people around us that might not be the best people that we wanted to be around, but if life put those people around us is to give us strength, patience to practice that. So let's do it joyfully. Let's really be the best of ourselves when we are at work. Try to help our colleagues and the other one that I would like to highlight here is to forget the favor done. So we have a tendency of whenever we do a favor to someone, we expect something back, but we shouldn't really expect anything. We should do things, good things for the sake of good, and not to basically expect something back from someone, especially from the people that are close to us. Because what happens is when we have too many expectations, typically it comes with a lot of disappointment. So in order to avoid the disappointment, let's just do it for the sake of good. Yeah, the other one, especially in those times that we live with politics and everything, because one votes in person A, B, or C, we start condemning the person opinion. And again, in a lot of cases, it might make sense, but we don't know, or we might not understand the reason why one has such a strong opinion about something. So let's go beyond that. Let's look into the good on people, which is one of there's another one here that talks about that. Let's try not to judge people or condemn the other opinions that are different from ours. Let's try to understand and respect those opinions rather than becoming enemies almost. I've seen, especially with the elections, I've seen people really avoiding their families and really becoming much more anger about everything. Yeah, number 7 here, very important, abolish any malicious or unnecessary questions. So in a lot of cases, especially at work, we tend to put people in certain situations by asking certain questions. So we should try to avoid that. And if people do things wrong, typically they will basically, by their mistakes, be recognized by that. So we don't need to be the enablers of that. Sometimes it's really hard not to do that, but you know, in this effort of becoming better, it's a great exercise. Let's try to be a good listener. In a lot of cases, especially when you have that close friend and they're telling you a certain problem or something they're going through, they not necessarily are expecting you to give them some sort of way to resolve that problem. They just want someone to listen what they're going through. So if someone tells you a problem, you not necessarily need to give a solution to that problem. You might just say, yeah, I really empathize to what you're saying, and I hope you find strength to go with it. Just be a good listener rather than try to solve that problem. Obviously, if you know ways in how to solve, you can do that. But in a lot of cases, people just want to be listened. And do not badmouth anyone. Bad mouthing is a really bad practice that has sometimes some good consequences. You know, a lot of people bond with other people by bad mouthing others, but there are better ways to bond with people rather than bad mouthing others. So we can try to avoid that. let's help spontaneously, like I said on the other bullet there. And again, absent others of our own issues, we tend to judge people by the things they say. And in a lot of cases, we judge people because we see bad things that we either face now or things that we did in our past, and that creates this inner anger within us and makes us very judgy. So let's not be judgy, because the same way we judge people, people might judge us. So let's try to see the good side of people. And I want to refrain here a little song from Michael Jackson. The transformation, it starts with the man in the mirror. So that's what we should do. If you want a better place for you and your family, you should really concentrate in becoming better yourself. So that's it for tonight. I hope you guys enjoyed, and thank you very much for the opportunity to be here.
No, thank you.